once. Life has treated me hard. I fear I'm a burden to bear. Take me to my Lord, oh brothers of mine. I know that my faith will heal me. My legs won't carry me that far, but you with your love, I know you will. I know you will. I have waited so long. This man is more than a man. If I'm seen in the flesh, such tears of joy will be my thanks to you. Take me to my Lord, oh sisters of mine. I know that my faith will heal me. My legs won't carry me that far, but you with your love, I know you will. I know you will bring me there. My own legs will carry me home. Bring me there, bring me there. My own legs will carry me home. I know they will. Is it fair, can I ask? I need some help this once. I have faith in my Lord, and also I have faith in you, my friends. Take me to my Lord, oh brothers of mine. I know that my faith will heal me. My legs won't carry me that far, but you with your love, I know you will. Take me to my Lord, oh sisters of mine. I know that my faith will heal me. My legs won't carry me that far, but you with your love, I know you will. I know you will.
So, wow, what a time, right? What a time we're living in. We don't get to pick our era, right? We only get to pick how we respond to it. So that's why we are gathered here today, and the session meets Wednesday, and may decide that we're going to go online for a while, maybe till Easter, and then do Easter outside. I'm not sure exactly, but we'll keep in touch. But in this exact moment, let's just all try to lay down a memory. You know how you know when there's something really special happening? Sometimes we know, and we just try to lay down a memory. So in case this is our last in-person service for several weeks, maybe through Easter, let's just all take this moment to be intentional and really lay down a memory and just, you know, be able to call that up, because there really is nothing like the love energy in this room. You know, the love energy in this room is unique and it's irreplaceable, And it's something that we really need. Our spirits really need it, you know. And I miss the children, oh my gosh, but we're trying to thread that needle, you know, and be leaders and be safe and healthy examples. And at the same time, we want to remember that Jesus, our teacher, was fearless and he healed by touch, right? Social distancing was not his thing. So I still have a sinus infection, but that's fine. It's not contagious. So to take a little escape from what's happening right now, because we're going to come back to that. I don't want to go too long here, but we will come back to that. But let's time travel back to first century Palestine, to the time of Jesus, to the time of that passage that I love, right? And let's remember what it was like for Jesus, right? First, if we're all going to be staying at home a lot more between now and Easter, I want to really highly recommend to you that you just read the Gospel of Mark, start to finish. Doesn't matter if you've already read it, parts of it, whatever. Just sit down and read it start to finish, right? As our literary teacher knows, this is the closest of the four Gospels to Jesus' actual life, right? The scholars agree that Mark was written down first. And it's not only is it closest to the life of Jesus in time, it was probably written about 30 years after the crucifixion, but it's also very close to the ground. And you feel like the evangelist Mark was in a rush, like he knew he didn't have a lot of time to work with. So he just doesn't waste any words. He goes from one scene to the next. And his transition word is this Greek word elthus, which is immediately. So you read it, it's like immediately this, immediately that, immediately this. It reads like a suspense novel. And here's the trick though, the ancients hated suspense. They hated suspense. I totally hate suspense too. Michael knows this. He's like, let's go to this movie. It's a thriller. I'm like, okay. Then I go over to the computer and I look up the spoiler thing that tells exactly what the plot is. I do this for book club books too. I can't enjoy a book unless I know how it's going to end. I did not used to be like that. I wrote a suspense thriller, but it was not published. It had too much sex in it. I couldn't do it. It would ruin my ministry career. But in any event, I personally, at this stage in my life, do not enjoy suspense. So in that way, I can really relate to the audience of the four evangelists who wrote the four Gospels, because they knew that their audience in the ancient world did not enjoy suspense. So if you open up any of the four Gospels, they always start with the end. Jesus is the Son of God. Okay, that's really the conclusion. It's like, who is this guy? He's the Son of God. They don't make you wait 16 chapters in Mark to tell you at the end, and yes, he rose from the dead and he's the Son of God. Right at the beginning, he's the Son of God. Okay, we can get that over with. We don't have to worry about who he is, right? And then they go on. Now, my theory, especially right now, is that life in the first century was suspenseful enough, right? We're looking at the Roman Empire, oppression, capital punishment everywhere, no human rights, oh my God, no food for a large part of the population, and definitely the pre-scientific, pretty much the pre-medical era. I mean, the tradition tells us that the Gospel of Luke is written by Luke the physician, but this is pre-leeches. I mean, this is, I don't know what medicine was like then, but not a lot of it. So Jesus emerges in this culture, right? And what is his primary identity? Healer. When you read the Gospel of Mark, he comes onto the scene, he is baptized, goes in the wilderness, that's 2 sentences, that 40 days, and then he starts calling disciples, but he can't even get his posse together before he's called to heal. And once he's done a little bit of healing, oh my gosh, the word is out, and for the rest of his earthly ministry, he has these crowds thronging around him, pressing into him. Social distancing was a concept, okay, because the leaders of the synagogue, following Leviticus 15, and other chapters of Leviticus as well, and the Torah, had it figured out who was clean and who was unclean. This is something that seems hardwired into humanity, because when we're in times of threat, like right now with the coronavirus, we go back into this ancient mind, you know, and we start dividing people up in our mind. I mean, it's almost like unconscious between clean and unclean, and we really need to watch that because it's happened with AIDS, it's happened with a lot of things in our lifetimes. So it was very hardwired into the first temple world of Jesus in Jerusalem, in the outskirts of Jerusalem. And so this woman who comes up, who's heard all about Jesus, the whole crowd is thronging around him. The leader of the synagogue has come to him. They all want to touch him because he heals by touch. He doesn't have, any medical, anything, right? So what he does is he heals by touch. He casts out demons, because that's apparently a really big problem in this society, is whether that was mental illness, addiction. We're not exactly sure what the range of problems was that the Bible represents as demon possession, right? Epilepsy, there's seizure disorder, there's a lot of scholarly guesses and theories on this. But so he has a lot of people come to him and their loved ones come. My daughter's been taken over by a demon. He engages. He doesn't run away. He engages. He looks right at the person. He casts out the demon. He touches people. In the first chapter alone, he has done so much healing that if you read through the first chapter to get to chapter 2, you could be exhausted. You're like, oh my gosh, this is just chapter 2. Look at all these people he's healed. So the word is out. He's a healer. And the crowd surround him. And by chapter 5 here, it's all up and down of the society. The leader of the synagogue to the person that, in essence, the synagogue has sentenced to her home for 12 years. Now, this woman has some kind of menstrual disorder, right? She can't stop bleeding, and that makes her unclean under the Levitical law, and she is ostracized from society. She's an untouchable. Nobody can touch her, and she cannot go out. Her own family can't touch her. She's completely sentenced to a life of no touch, right? And I think what we know is how brutal that is, right? Because in our society today, one of the epidemics that we had before this thing was loneliness. Loneliness was just absolutely a huge problem in our society, and still is, and probably is going to get worse, right? And that's where we have to really think about what God is calling us to do, right? Because touch is so important. So how do we address loneliness and the need for loving touch in a time of social distancing? That's a question that we need to go to God to and really ask about. So what Jesus does is he heals people by laying on hands, by making them well. This fascinating passage shows us that she comes up behind him and touches just his garment, and she knows in her body that she's healed. And he knows that power, dunamis, has gone out from him. And he wants to know who she is, right? Because this is a personal relationship. It's not just, Jesus didn't, he fed the multitudes. He didn't wave his hand and heal the whole lot. He did it person to person. So he wants to know who she is. And she tells him her whole story. And he embraces her into his family. Daughter, your faith has healed you. He doesn't go, oh, that was my dunamis. I did that. He says, your faith has healed you. Because that's the thing. When he says to the folks at Jairus' house after that, do not fear, only believe. He's giving them the roadmap. Put fear behind you. Hold on just to your belief. The pistis in the New Testament is trust. The trust in the New Testament is exactly what that woman just did. Don't let anything come between you and holding on to Jesus. Trust that that's all you need to do. All you need to do. Just break through the crowd, the crowd in your head of voices, the fear, all the stuff. Just reach out, grab his cloak, good enough, and his power will go into you. His power will make you well. and make you know that somehow each one of us and together the church, we are going to get through this. We're going to get through it. We are not in charge of how long we're here for, but we are in charge of how we live while we're here. And that's what God is asking us to do now. If you're feeling anxious, join the club, right? Let's turn our anxiety into something positive. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples. Michael brought in from the mailbox yesterday. This little, was it the mailbox or the front step? Oh, it was in the mailbox. Okay, this was in our mailbox yesterday. Hi, it's a little printed note. Hi, I'm your neighbor Claire, and she gives her address. I wanted to make sure everyone has what they need right now. If you need help running errands, getting groceries, picking up prescriptions, or would like to be part of a neighborhood support team, call or text me. And she gives her phone number, right? If you're a member of Nextdoor, consider joining the Cascade Drive group I created. Social distancing doesn't need to mean social isolation. Be well, Claire. So she's got all of her contact information on here, and she's dropping this off in everybody's mailbox, right? Another thing that someone did with her gifts, I found a really good 10-minute informational medical video last night on Twitter from Dr. Sarah Qureshi, who teaches and practices medicine at Georgetown Hospital. She graduated from Mayo Clinic Medical School and Harvard Public Health School, and she said, what we're she was just, here it is, folks. Most of us are going to get this virus, right? The overwhelming majority of people will not have serious symptoms at all. What we're trying to do now in the idea of closing school, closing a lot of things, possibly going online at church, and keeping social distance is flattening the curve. Probably most of you have heard that, right? Flattening the curve doesn't mean that we're thinking we're putting on a bulletproof vest and we're not going to get it ourselves, right? Flattening the curve means we don't want to have everybody get sick at once. Because as long as everybody doesn't get sick at once, our medical system will be able to give the best care to the most people. If we all do what they're doing in Fort Lauderdale, spring break, I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of Fort Lauderdale airport and the beach, and oh my goodness, it's not good. If we, in the New York City bars, you know, but people are just not social distancing, let's put it that way. So if we take no precautions, more people are going to get sick, which will mean more people will have, actual consequences from being sick and need medical care, and we'll just swamp our medical system. So we're trying to flatten the curve so that basically this thing spreads out. But we're looking at months, not weeks, of really needing to address this very serious medical problem. And here at church, we definitely want to be practical and do, everything that we can do to rise to this challenge. So this helpful advice from Dr. Qureshi is avoid non-essential public gatherings for the next 2 to 4 weeks. Keep your distance. These are do's and don'ts. The do's are keep 2 weeks of food at home and 90 days of prescription medicine. The don'ts are don't be racist. Apparently she's already seeing people really being anti-Asian. Is that what you're nodding about, or kind of? Yeah. Don't be racist, folks. That's basic, right? Don't hoard. Okay, that's a temptation. Don't be mad at yourself if you ran out and bought 12 rolls of cartons of toilet paper. Just share it and find out that somebody else doesn't have any. And then don't spread misinformation. That's a big one. Make sure your information is really evidence-backed. So this is what we as a church and we individually can do. We see what my neighbor Claire is doing. We see what Dr. Qureshi is doing. As a church, we are really discerning what the will of God is for us in this time. We want to make sure that we are the most support to you, to each of you, right? And also to our community at large without, doing anything that is going against this curve flattening thinking of trying to spread out that epidemic and support medical system. So we're still discerning that. As I said, session meets Wednesday, and we're going to sit up here, appropriately spaced, and try to figure out what God is calling us to do. We have good resources to do some streaming. We're talking about having Easter outside. Bring your own blanket, like a drive-in theater. Who knows, right? We will figure it out. We will get the sound system that we need.
Sunrise service.
Yes, we could do 2 services even. We have to talk to our musicians. But we want to make sure we're very, very considerate of our brilliant staff. But we believe that God will guide us through this with creativity and compassion, right? Because this is the time right now. Whenever something happens that makes you really kind of, the cloak of denial of mortality has been ripped away, right? And we're all thinking, or I think a lot of us at least are thinking a little more seriously, oh yeah, I'm mortal, and the people I love the most are too. We like to kind of pretend like that's not the case, right? But you read the gospel of Jesus Christ, all 4 of them end in his death, right? And then his resurrection, victory over death. But we have to, we rise to the occasion best if we accept our mortality, and then we try to live an exemplary life, right? And so this is how we lead an exemplary life. Each one of us thinks, what is the one thing in life that is most important to me? If I were to die of this, or 30, 50 years from now, what is the one thing I want to be remembered for? What's the most important thing, right? Figure that out now. Figure it out and live it now. Don't wait. We have our end of life spiritual work is always say you're sorry to the people that you should have said you're sorry to a long time ago, right? Thank all the people in your life who you owe thanks to. Say, I love you to everybody you love. Michael and I are saying I love you a lot more now, like every couple minutes at home. And say, I forgive you, or will you forgive me, right? That's the 4, and this is what we learn in chaplaincy to do with people in hospice, right? Have you caught up with your spiritual work? Have you said you're sorry? Have you said thank you? Have you asked to be forgiven? Have you given your forgiveness? And have you shown your love? So we should be doing that. We should be doing that, and we should be thinking about really seeking the good, because there is so much good out there, and being the good and living that exemplary life of courage and compassion that Christ calls us each to. God will fill us up. God will make our spirits well. All we have to do is reach for God, right? And our spirits will be healed. So we may not be able to touch, but we are going to stay in touch. Right, friends? We're not going to let anybody be at home, be alone, be lonely, be by themselves. We are going to stay in touch. So if we can make that commitment together, let's all say amen.
Amen.
May it be so.